In this video, I just wanted to quickly touch upon a very simple topic, and that topic is why I do not breed or keep bristlenose plecos anymore. So, those of you who have watched my channel know that I started off with bristlenose plecos. That was the first pleco I got in this whole pleco breeding journey. It started back in, I want to say 2018. I had been a fish keeper all my life, but I hadn't really bred fish before, and I always wanted to get into it. So one day I just kind of sat there and I thought to myself, what kind of fish do I want to breed? I know people breed cichlids. I know people breed all sorts of different types of things, but I was thinking, what is a very hardy type of fish that is also non-aggressive? Plecos came to mind, so I decided to try to breed plecos, and the first logical place to start when breeding plecos is bristlenose plecos. They breed like bunnies, they're very easy to take care of, it is very easy to sex them. So I started with some chocolate bristlenose plecos, and I worked my way through all the different kinds of, common bristlenose plecos. Not any L numbers, but I did the long fin, short fin, I did the super reds, the green dragons, the blue eye lemons. I even dabbled with the snow whites for a little while, but those were a little bit fragile, and they died on me pretty often, so I quit those pretty early. But I eventually exited bristlenose altogether. Now, the super dirt cheap ones like the chocolates and the albinos, those were really a stepping stone one for me. I only bred them a very small handful of times, and then I moved on and sold the breeders to move on to the more expensive stuff like the longfin green dragons and the longfin super reds. And I bred those for a while. A lot of you watching this video might have longfin super reds of mine in your tanks right now. I sold them to people around the country. I sold them in bulk to distributors, to local fish stores. I was breeding those things by the hundreds, and it was a big thing for my little breeding operation. But I decided maybe a year to a year and a half ago to just quit bristlenose altogether, even the expensive ones that were making me a good amount of money for, the amount of time and effort I was putting into it. But the reason I ended up ultimately quitting the bristlenose in favor of Ancistrus primarily is because I wanted to work in smaller quantities of higher value fish. And let me explain what I mean by that. Once I conquered bristlenose plecos, I knew I could breed them confidently. I knew their ins and outs and what they needed to be successful. I moved on to L333 King Tiger plecos. I bred those a few times, and once I kind of had a good grasp of those and a good grasp of working with Ancistrus that, have different dietary needs and different kind of breeding group sizes, I then moved on to L260 Queen Arabesque plecos. I did those for a little bit. And then I made the jump to what was always kind of the finish line for me, although I have taken it a bit further than this even. But I made the jump to L046 Zebra Plecos, the holy grail of plecos. Those were always the dream of mine to breed, and once I had bred L260s, I was fairly confident I could handle L046s. I had read a lot online that said that the breeding and keeping requirements pretty much matched up and the spawning pretty much matched up, and I can attest to that, having bred both the Queen Arabesques and the Zebra Plecos. A ton of similarities in their spawning behavior, how big they get, what they eat. So anyway, I worked my way up to Zebra Plecos, and then what I began to realize is the tanks with the Zebra Plecos and the tanks with the longfin super reds, it wasn't really all that different. What I had going on was I had Zebra Plecos spawning, and each spawn, maybe I'd get 11 fry out of it, and each one of those fry could fetch $100 to $125 once I got them to an inch and a quarter. On the flip side, I had the longfin super red tank, and my breeding pair was throwing, I don't know, maybe something like 30 to 50 fry every month to month and a half. And each one of those fry I was selling for, if I was selling them in bulk, I was selling them for like $8 a piece. If I was selling them individually, I was selling them closer to $15 a piece. So, I was doing the math, and I'm not going to do the quick math right now, but this is the kind of equation I give people a lot when I explain this. I really found that I'd rather breed and sell 10 fry that are each worth $100 as opposed to 100 fry that are each worth $10. If you kind of get what I'm saying, it kind of the math ends up being the same, whether you're going to breed a smaller quantity of expensive plecos like zebra plecos, or whether you're going to breed large quantities of cheaper plecos like the longfin super reds, longfin green dragons. You can a lot of times do the math and figure out kind of where that ends up being break even, and it just ends up being the same, whether you're doing one or the other. But the main difference doing the zebra plecos and why I enjoyed that so much more is the bristlenose pleco babies. It was just a bear raising those things up because you have so many. Like I said, they breed like rabbits, so you end up having hundreds on your hands, and you're going through food at a much faster rate. That tank is dirty all the time. You can never, at least this was the case for me, I could never get the water quality to where I wanted it in that tank because there was just hundreds of fish churning through tons of green beans and canned mushrooms a day, and the tank water was just, the quality of the water was bad. I had a few different crashes. I had to dedicate a whole tank to the bristlenose pleco fry, and even then that wasn't enough. I could have dedicated 3 more tanks to the bristlenose pleco fry to really give them the adequate space they needed, whereas the zebra pleco fry, I can float the 10 or 11 of them from each spawn in a floating breeder box in the same tank as the parents, and I can keep them in there for months at a time with that not being an issue. I mean, they could get up to 1.5 inches. They can get up to selling size and still be in that breeding box, and it won't affect the water quality, and I'm not going to have to do a ton of extra feeding like I would with the bristlenose plecos. So that was really what kind of drove me away from the bristlenose plecos. And one more thing that I like too with the, breeding the smaller quantities of expensive fish is it's less transactions too, to offload 100 longfin super reds. If I couldn't get somebody to take them for bulk or get the bulk pricing that I wanted, I'd have to make tons of local transactions and online transactions, maybe sell 5 here, 10 here, 15 there, another 15 there. Whereas with the zebra plecos, a lot of times I'll find somebody who's very excited to get into zebra plecos, and they'll just take, a whole spawn off my hands. They'll take all 10 fry, or they'll take half of the fry, and somebody else will take the other half. And, I just offloaded that 10 fry in 2 transactions for $1,000, where I would have had to do so many transactions to get to $1,000 with the bristlenose plecos. So what it came down to for me, I don't necessarily breed for profit, but I breed to cover my operating expenses, at least right now anyway. And I'm not super picky about what I keep in the tanks. I like to keep stuff that I like, but I also like to keep stuff that makes my life easiest as well. So the zebra plecos and the Ancistrus in general really just made my life easier because it cut down on the maintenance, cut down on the feeding, cut down on the tank space needed, cut down on the transactions, and really I still ended up making the same amount of money with fewer fish. And the last challenge with the bristlenose plecos is because they are so easy to breed, besides the snow white ones at least, it was kind of like a constant pricing battle. Like I said, I'm selling the longfin super reds to people across the country. That's that many more houses that now have longfin super reds that are raising them up and eventually breeding them themselves, because bristlenose plecos are very easy to keep and very easy to breed. So it was kind of like an arms race. Like, as more and more people were getting them, my prices that I was able to charge for them were going down. Everybody suddenly has longfin super reds now. Everybody suddenly has longfin green dragons. And now, the longfin super red fry that I might have gotten $20 for before is now suddenly only worth $15, or maybe worth $14 or $13 or $12. And it just kind of felt like it was constantly dropping because more and more people were getting them because it was so easy to breed them in huge quantities. Whereas the Ancistrus, and especially the zebra plecos, they don't breed as regularly, and they throw tiny batches of fry, and those fry take forever to grow up to an age where you can then breed them. So there's a lot more barriers to breeding Ancistrus than there is for bristlenose, which kind of makes the price a bit more stable. Now, with all of that being said, don't get me wrong, I absolutely love bristlenose plecos. They were a great beginner pleco to get me into the hobby, and then once I learned how to breed them, they were a ton of fun to breed and breed the different varieties of them. They're a lot of fun, and they're super easy to breed and super rewarding. But I think a lot of us pleco keepers just reach a point where it just logistically doesn't make sense to keep breeding them compared to the other fish you could be keeping in those tanks that could make you the same or even more money for way less hassle. So that's kind of the thought process, and that's the explanation I give people when I explain why I no longer keep or breed bristlenose plecos. I have people to this day that still reach out to me about the super red longfins I used to sell, a year and a half ago, asking if they could buy more, and I give them this whole explanation on how I don't even keep a single bristlenose pleco in my tanks anymore. But definitely would recommend them if you are just getting into the hobby. Great stepping stone. And if you want to breed zebra plecos, I would recommend going in that same order I did, going from bristlenose to L333 to L260 to eventually doing the zebra pleco. But let me know down in the comments below if you guys agree or disagree with the stuff I said. I know I've heard other people kind of share the same sentiment, but maybe there's some of you out there who are still breeding bristlenose who want to make a case for it. So let me know in the comments down below. And if you found this video interesting in any way, hit that like button. And if you're new to my channel and you want to see a lot of great pleco and aquarium content just like this, hit the subscribe button. And as always, thank you for watching.